Well, there's quite a lot of young families, but what I really like about it is we've got like old people sort of 70s and 80s, but then we've got very young families and we've got teenagers. So really the whole spectrum. And I just like the fact that everyone's sat around like a big family and they somehow just rub along together, you know. People are all quite positive together, openly talking about any problems or praying about things, supporting each other, helping each other if somebody needs their grass cut or whatever, or to borrow something, or even financially. And it just feels like a big family, and I really value that because one of the things I find, especially in this world we find ourselves in, is there's a lot of isolated people, and this is very much a commuter village, and you could just be behind a door, not see anybody. One of the people who comes, see any contact he has with anyone. So obviously he sees us a Wednesday night and a Sunday, and he gets fed on a Wednesday night, he gets toast and stuff on a Sunday afternoon, he gets fellowship.
Welcome to the Pivot Podcast, where we explore how the church can faithfully navigate a changing world. I'm Terry Eldon, and today I'm joined with my colleague, Dwight Shiley.
So as many inherited forms of church struggle to connect meaningfully with neighbors in today's world, we need a lot of new Christian communities. That's why we're so excited to welcome today the Reverend Fiona Mayne to the show. Fiona is a pioneer minister in the Church of England and the leader of Haywood Village Church in rural North Somerset. Church planting was probably the last thing Fiona imagined herself doing early in her life, but she's been on an amazing journey of following God's leading. We wanted you to hear her story, in part because the steps she took are simple, organic ones that most anyone can take. So Fiona, welcome to the Pivot Podcast.
Oh, thank you very much, Dwight. Nice to meet you, Terry, as well.
So, Fiona, I haven't had a encounter with you, but Dwight has told me that you have quite an interesting spiritual journey, and that early in life you weren't very connected to the Christian faith. So tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey and how you came to faith.
Okay, well, growing up, I wasn't a Christian at all. But the only connection I had was that I went to a Church of England school. So I guess I learned a bit of the basics. But I thought that Jesus and all the stories that we were told, I thought it was like a really sweet fairy story. And I didn't think it had any relation to reality at all. I thought it was really lovely and quite heartwarming. But I didn't realize Jesus was a real person or anything like that. And so I wasn't christened, and I wasn't had no connection with church at all. I didn't get married in a church. And so all of my adult life, a lot of my early adult life, I was God wasn't on my radar at all, really. But then I was very busy working as an independent financial advisor. I had young children. One of them was autistic, and life was really quite tough at that time. And at that time, I was looking for something, a bit of an outlet, really. And I found this Krav Maga course, which is like a bit like an Israeli martial art course. And I was training doing that, which was a bit of an outlet. And one day, I got quite good at that, doing it 3 or 4 times a week, and then starting doing instructor training. And one day while I was there at the instructor training course on a Saturday morning, there was this book on the side. And I've still got the book now, which was this book here. I don't know if you can see. It's called The Heart of a Hooligan by Dave Gilles. And he was the one who was lending us his hall to use for the Saturday morning. And he had been a football hooligan, and he turned his life around and become chaplain of Bristol Rovers. Now he's an army chaplain as well. Anyway, I had nothing to do with God, but I read this book, and it brought me to tears. It really brought me to tears. But then I forgot all about it, put it back sort of on my bookshelf for a couple of years, forgot all about it. And then it was just, I had a bit of a marriage breakup. Things were tough. And I was looking for a place to go on holiday, and somebody recommended going to a Christian hotel. So I went to this. I phoned them up first and said, I'm not a Christian. Don't talk to me about God. I hope that's okay. And they were like, absolutely, you're very welcome. And I just felt like when I went there that the people were just so welcoming. They didn't force anything on me. And it was while I was there that I had this experience. So I'd been going for a couple of years to different ones. This one was down in Sidmouth, and it was in August 2012. And all I can say is that we were sitting around the table at a dinner one night, just like we did many times before. And suddenly I heard my voice saying to everyone around the table, I said something like, it's almost like God's got this heavenly jigsaw puzzle that only he can see. And we're just sort of like the pieces, and he's up, got this higher view. And they were all sort of saying, are you winding us up? Because we know you're not a Christian. And I said, I don't know, something's happened, I don't know. And so all I can say is before dinner, I was an atheist. And after dinner, with the sort of coffee and mints, I was a Christian. And I was sitting around the table with the organizer of the holiday, Steve Byrne. And I actually said to him over coffee, I said, I need to change my job. I need to actually help God and do whatever God wants me to do. And he thought I was winding him up. But he said, no, if you're serious, Fiona, then God will honor that. And so then the next morning I woke up and I was just looked in the mirror, and I actually liked myself for the first time. I just looked like a completely different person. Everything changed overnight. So my parenting changed. My children noticed it. I gave away all my designer handbags and clothes. Just so many things changed. And but when I got back from holiday, I just really didn't want it to end there, and I didn't quite know what to do. And so I remembered this book, and I read the book again. It brought me to tears another time. And then I found this thing in the back of the book, which was a prayer to say if you wanted to accept God in your life. And I simply just said the prayer, which was, Dear God, I know that I mess things up on my own. I just ask you now to help me to turn away from my old life. And I thank you that Jesus died on the cross so that I can be forgiven for all the bad stuff I've done. And I just ask you now to fill me with your Holy Spirit. Amen. And that was it. That was it. And so I felt like I needed to find a church. So I emailed him. It was in the back of the book. And he actually took me to a church in Bristol, which isn't that far from Weston-super-Mare. And I went on Alpha there, got baptized. But very soon I felt very missional, because I've been reading all sorts of books like Jackie Pullinger. And I just felt I've got to tell other people, because I was oblivious, that many other people are oblivious. And it's been like a fire that's been kind of burning inside me ever since, really, to just share the good news. So that was the beginning of the journey.
That's wonderful. So tell us then about what are some next steps in terms of, tell us a bit about the context that you live in and kind of your connections there and how you started to build Christian community.
Well, what happened was, so obviously after that holiday, and I went to this church in Bristol, and then they said, you need a church where you live. You need community and Christians where you live. So we all prayed about it one Sunday. And then by the Thursday of that week, I'd met a vicar at a local church who was just about to take over. It was about 5 minutes from my house. And he said he needed to sort of grow the church, and he was having a new role there, and it was all about mission and outreach. And I said, can I help you to grow the church? Because that is just on my heart. And he was absolutely thrilled, as you can imagine. And so I just felt so missional that I put this poster in my window saying, community barbecue, all welcome. And 100 people turned up. And basically I introduced them to the church because I knew everyone where I lived. I wasn't a threatening person because, they didn't really know me as a Christian. But at that barbecue, I introduced the church people to the other people. And it started, then I started to be Alpha coordinator at the church and sort of helping with youth groups, and had a home group. And then I started to feel called to Hayward Village specifically, which is only 2 minutes from where I was living before, in the car. And I just felt God kept taking me over there. I'd be walking my dog and it'd be like over this place, which was, I had no connection with it before. And I kept thinking, why do I keep finding myself at Hayward Village? I don't understand. But it was almost like, because this new housing estate had been built and there was just nothing there, that I had this heart for bringing community and bringing God there, really. So the local church had a bit of a remit for outreach, and I sort of told them, we shared together the vision. And we started off just very simply with carols around a Christmas tree. There was only about a few houses there back in 2014, so it's a long time ago. And we were just sort of had a little fire in a little pit, and we literally just had carols and chocolates and things and gave them around, knocked on people's doors. They didn't have any Wi-Fi or any street lights. It was just like a building site, really. And then we'd sort of gather people together for key festival times like Easter and Christmas. So it would be the carols, and then it would be like an Easter fun day or something. And I organised things like community walks and all sorts of things like that. And basically just spent time with people locally in the community and just asking them what they wanted. And they said, predominantly, they said a place together, and they were all very community minded because it was a new place. So that's really encouraging. And so I asked the school, which was the only other building there apart from this pub right at the other end. So I asked if we could use their space together, and I set up a pop-up cafe called Take 5. It was just one afternoon a week, but it got very big. So we had about 100 people coming. It was just mad with like dressing up and Lego and crafts and all sorts of different things going on. And then the people came to that and they said, so why are you doing this? And we said, well, we're Christians and we want to build like a community. We want to serve the community. And then they said, well, where is the church at Hayward Village? And we said, well, there isn't a church, but if there was a church here, what would you want it to be like? And they said, well, we'd like it to be just like this, but we could ask questions about God, so it'd be like a cafe, but we could ask you things about your faith. And so we started Tea and Toast Church. So it was really very similar to the pop-up other thing, Take 5, but it was just with the Christian content, very similar to Alpha. So we started that in 2017. And I actually moved house in 2018, just off my own back. Nobody sort of told me to or sorted it out. I just felt called to move. And that meant I could do so much more. So I started Alpha in my home because it was quite a big house. And then the people who came to Alpha, they wanted more. So we said, well, what would that look like? And handed it back to them again, obviously, with a big blank sheet of paper and Sharpies. But obviously it has to be, I said to them, it has to have Christian content. It's not just going to be a social club, it's got to be have integrity. And so they got very enthusiastic. They said they wanted something midweek, something where they could, a bit like the early Acts church, where they could come together in relationship, speak about their week, ask each other questions, read the Bible, pray. So we started Rooted. They came up with a name, and it was always over a meal. Initially, it was at my house, but now it's too big, so it's in the school. Once we have our building, it'll be in the building. And we ran Alpha at my house several times and in the school. And through this process, eventually I got ordained, but it was more like a thing along the way. It wasn't really, it happened afterwards, really. It caught up with everything. And then we started weekly church because people wanted it more than once a month. It started off once a month, and it's just grown and grown, really. And we managed to get a plot of land to actually build a permanent building, which will be like a cafe style, because the whole thing is all about hospitality and just gathering the community, really. So we're sort of in the throes of the building project at the moment. There's quite a lot going on.
So I'm really curious how the organic nature, which I know, Dwight, you already said this, you already teed it up, but the way that you listened, you did something when people wanted more, you said, well, what would you want? And it sounded like there was a real openness to both the ideas and the ownership. Say more about that.
And you have to be quite careful. I mean, I see my role a bit like when you go on holiday somewhere that you've never been before and you want to be introduced to the local culture. But if you just went on your own, you might be a bit lost. So I see that I'm a bit of a bridge between the Christians and the non-Christians or whatever, or the church. And so therefore I wanted to know what they wanted, not what I wanted. It's like, how are they going to connect with it? So it was really, and I spend a lot of time out where people are. I'm not just spending time waiting in a dusty church for people to come to me. I'm out, in the pubs or in the gym or wherever it is, just talking to people and just taking my faith wherever I go, like whether I'm walking up a mountain or whatever it is. But the thing about handing over the control, it was a little bit frightening because obviously I had to make sure it was authentic. And so some of the people were wanting to steer me like, oh, I know, let's just have a social club. And I said, what you're describing is like a nightclub. Like, that's nothing to do with what I want to get involved with. That's great, but I'm out, But a lot of people, they were genuine, but it's just trying to keep them on track and sort of facilitate it, really. I think that's my role because of my business background as well. But you still have to try and keep everyone on track. It's a constant process because obviously if you're in a space that doesn't have a cross and it doesn't have stained glass windows, it's very easy to forget all about God and just do social club, But I've learned quite a lot along the way because I was at CMS, Church Mission Society, and, just about the variety of different ways of doing church and being authentic. So that's been amazing.
So tell us a little bit about now, kind of when the church gathers. What does it look like? When do you gather, and do you still do a cafe-style church? Or give us a glimpse of it.
Well, God's always given me the thing that it will be just like the early church in Acts. Even when it scales up bigger and bigger, it's always going to be round tables, intergenerational. There's no youth going off in different rooms. Everyone's together. So we have a midweek on a Wednesday evening where we everybody will just turns up about half an hour before. Different people cook. And so it's just like a meal, like a family meal, really, but different. Depends how many people are there. I've got about 30 people at the moment in our church. And so people are just come and join in. So people are preparing food. People are washing up afterwards. It's quite communal. It reminds me of like a Christmas Day feel to it, really. And people say who've just come that they feel like they've been there all their life, because I don't know what it is about it, but it might be that I get everybody to do something, even if it's just putting out a chair or something. So I don't do it for them. I think I learnt that quite early on when I just did everything and it was all done when they got there, to get people to do it with me, not doing it for them. So that's what it looks like on a Wednesday night. We have grace, we have the meal, and then we sometimes read a Bible passage, or sometimes it could be that we're working through a film, like we were looking at the Chosen series and discussing that at one point. And obviously prayer. And then on a Sunday afternoon, the tea and toast. It's a bit more formal in that I'm standing up rather than sitting around the table with the others. And we have worship band when we can get one, which we always need more worship people. And that's, but it's not sort of very structured. It's very much more like alpha or introductory. And I always try not to use any Christian jargon at all. Things like being saved and things, or whatever, any sort of Christian jargon. I always explain everything. I explain communion. I always pitch it like I'm talking to an 11-year-old sort of child, really, but not in a patronizing way. But so it seems to work for adults and children, and people don't feel awkward if they don't understand. So I'd say it's probably alpha level. And then people who want something deeper, they can always go to a church in the morning. But my role and what God's called me to do is for introductory for people who don't know God. So I'm never going to be going into deep theological things, because I want to gather people in who don't know Jesus. Kind of quite non-threatening. I taught them through the whole thing. I taught them through, like this last Sunday when we had communion, I explained what it is, why we're doing it, tell them all the things that I could think of that might make them nervous, tell them they don't have to do it, or they can do it, or that it's non-alcoholic so children can do it, try and we've got another one that we do around a meal, which we had to get special authority from the bishop so we could sit around and do it like an actual meal, like in Acts, which was amazing, as part of the meal. So that was really special. And then I try and think what questions they might have and try and preempt that. So if somebody's new, I get them to come a bit early and talk them through what might happen, and try and keep things not too long. And then we have discussion time at both the Wednesday night and the Sunday. A lot of it's about discussion time and relationship building, I think. So key. And I ended up doing my dissertation all about discipleship in the end, because I was sort of thinking it's such a big subject. I learned quite a lot along the way. It's been amazing.
So I love that your theological education came later, after you've already had another career and you were starting to do this. What do you think your experience as an independent financial advisor, or your previous experiences before you did this, how did they help inform your approach here?
Well, I do think that God uses everything. Nothing's ever wasted, and you can see all the pieces. I mean, because I'm managing the building project, all the financial thing has been invaluable. The marketing sort of things that I've learned from all that, it helps me to see things from other people's points of view and to be quite business-like. Obviously, churches aren't businesses, but the more business-like you can be, I think people kind of get it a bit more if it's a bit done professionally, if you know what I mean. And just all the experiences along the way about using people's gifts and talents, and just encouraging people, which you do when you're in a business environment, when you're working with people, when you're managing people, you bring out the best in them and encourage them and help them and delegate and things like that. So it's all useful skills, really. And, managing a budget and trying to empower people and take away the worries to let them just get on with the thing that they're good at and say, don't worry about the big picture. I can deal with that, but you go and do that home group because you're really good at that. And don't worry about all the other things, I'll take that. And I'm just not faced by big numbers because of being an independent financial advisor. I don't think some people would just find it overwhelming. having to raise money or deal with all the spreadsheets or whatever it is. But I think all these gifts, also my son being autistic has helped me with like empathy in terms of understanding how people might be feeling. I don't know if that seems to help. And I've got quite a lot of people with special needs who come to our service because the way I approach it, I suppose I just maybe can empathize with all those different things they might be thinking or whatever, I don't know. But we definitely have quite a high proportion of people with different special needs. So,
well, tell us a little bit more about who does come. Like who lives in Haywood Village and.
Well, there's quite a lot of young families, but what I really like about it is we've got like old people sort of 70s and 80s, but then we've got very young families and we've got teenagers. So really the whole spectrum. And I just like the fact that everyone's sat around like a big family and they somehow just rub along together, people are all quite positive together, openly talking about any problems or praying about things, supporting each other, helping each other if somebody needs a grass cut or whatever, or to borrow something, or even financially. And it just feels like a big family. And I really value that because one of the things I find, especially in this world we find ourselves in, is there's a lot of isolated people. And this is very much a commuter village. And you could just be behind a door, not see anybody. One of the people who comes, see any contact he has with anyone. So obviously he sees us a Wednesday night and a Sunday, and he gets fed on a Wednesday night. He gets toast and stuff on a Sunday afternoon. He gets fellowship. We all throughout COVID, we shopped for him and the only people that he saw. So it's really quite nice, but I just think I want to do it on a bigger scale. And I think God's calling me to have this building so we can do it much bigger and just spread God's love and point people to Jesus, really. We've got this amazing plot of land, which is right at the end of this long road called the Runway, because it used to be a place where the RAF locking, which was where the planes used to take off from. And so the vision God's given me is this amazing building, and it looks a bit like a lighthouse because it's right at the end of the runway, drawing people along. And I've had sort of a vision of every aspect of it. And this has been going on since 2014, and we've got the architect plans and everything. But it was just absolutely incredible when the salespeople Persimmon said that we could have the land for a nominal £1. We just couldn't believe it, but I knew it was not such a prayer. But we've got quite a lot on our hands to actually, do all the fundraising and the next steps. And I could probably do with more help of more people, with different skills and things to come alongside. But it has been very, very encouraging what God's been doing.
So what do you hope this project will do? Like, as you begin to see it and engage people in it, and then hear these responses, like things being affordable, people showing up with different gifts. What do you see the long-term impact that this building and this project will have?
Just amazing. By bringing people together and on a bigger scale that we can tell more people about Jesus, because we're a bit invisible here because we don't have a building. So yes, we have a flyer on the gate at the school, but I just think doing things on a bigger scale, for example, it can be used all week. At the moment, the school is being used as a school, so we can't really get access to it. And just the amount of people we can help. We want to have all sorts of lunches and different things for people and bring all the lonely people together and all sorts of different groups. They're using it like toddler groups and all the usual things. But the main thing is just that it would have a real presence and bring the community together. And there isn't really a space like that here at all. And just be able to inspire other people to go off and do other things that God's calling them to do and show them how it's possible. Just inspire them that you can just start with nothing and you don't need some big financial thing or somebody to tell you what to do. You just wait for God to call you to do it.
So it sounds like this building won't look necessarily like a traditional church building. Give us a bit of an image for it. And if I recall correctly, you've got maybe some space that you'll use, like lease out for other nonprofits or things like that. So the business model is a bit different as well, right?
It's basically going to be a multi-purpose building, and it will be called Haywood Hub, home of Haywood Village Church. So it will be very much a community building, but the church will run it, but it will have a management committee, just so there's stability and everything. But the rooms will be hireable. There'll be different spaces, and some of the walls can go back and be used for multi-purpose. And there will be a proper kitchen so we can do proper meals for people. cafe space. There'll be an upstairs. It's got sort of like a balcony bit. So when you've got a really massive service, people at the top can look over the top onto the service. The whole thing is about being multi-purpose. So you can, just keep setting up in different ways, really. And just be at the absolute heart of the community, because there's nothing else apart from the school, and there's a pub right down the other end, which is a mile down the other way. And just that people can be in and out of there all week. And just by being in there, somehow they'll be connected to Jesus, because so much will be going on. They might come in to get something like a mobile library or something, or there'll be so many different things going on in their food bank, whatever. And suddenly they'll just hear tea and toast music coming down the stairs or something, or somebody will just say something, or they'll have a chat over a coffee, and there'll be a lot of Christian volunteers working there. And I just feel it'll just be an amazing impact. And then all those people will go off and do other things, and just the impact of that really would be amazing. It's just been a vision since 2014 that God has really put on my heart. It's been amazing. And other people have sort of come on board with that, which is really lovely. So, it's encouraging. It is encouraging. And I've been very inspired by Ali Bolton, who was a pioneer minister in Swindon. And she came to my church just before 2014. And she just did a talk about starting a church plant. And she did something on a new housing estate. And she made it sound so doable. And she just said, just put some welcome packs through people's doors or whatever, gather some people together. And I just thought, that doesn't sound too difficult, And she's been quite an inspiration just to get me started, really, that it's not rocket science. It's just gather a few people together, all about relationship, really, as well.
That's awesome. Sometimes we don't want to know what all the things are, right? But how were you encouraged or developed as a leader, and how are you developing others as you think? Because there's a lot of leaders, it sounds like, needed to carry this out.
I was encouraged by my sending church. I didn't even have an idea about planting a church. I didn't even know what that would, that wasn't an idea I'd ever even heard of. I didn't even know it was like a thing you could go and do, like a franchise kind of thing, but whatever. But they encouraged me. They spotted gifts in me very early on, just because I was so excited. I had all this energy. I wanted to tell people about Jesus. So they'd have been mad not to use that, and they let me, so the vicar there just let me run Alpha, and it was on a large scale for 2 years. He just let me do the whole thing. I'd only been on one Alpha myself. I had no experience, but I just quickly went on a course and just took it on, really. So I learned on the job. It was like building the bridge as you're walking on it, a bit like in lockdown when we were trying to do the online services. And so that's been really good, and they've really helped, and they've been very supportive, like praying, and they gave us some initial finance, just a small amount, but just by encouraging and standing by us, really, it's just been amazing. And I just try and encourage other people, so let them do things that they feel comfortable with. So there's a young person in our church who does some public speaking. He's very good, and he's been with us since he was very, very young, just around about 2014, really. And now he's much older, so he's doing a lot more public speaking. He's on our committee with our building project. And that's quite a big thing for somebody who's under 18, to be involved in some really high-level discussions. So it doesn't bother me about age or background. Everybody just can come and use their skills. Obviously, we've got musicians. We've got people who are particularly good at discussion groups, good people for catering. Some people might need a bit more support. So I've got people who are very good at maybe going and researching something, but they don't really want to stand up at the front. And so that's still very, lots of different valuable skills. And also I have a bit of a thing where I can kind of see what people are good at without them having to tell me. I can kind of spot it somehow. So that's really helpful. And sometimes we have like a day where we do a thing about a focus on spiritual gifts and talents, and we sort of encourage each other, which is really nice. It's not just coming from me. Somebody else will say, I noticed you're very good at prayer or something to somebody else. So that's been really good. But I want to sort of do myself out of a job and just everybody to be amazing at what they do. And they're all really, really brilliant. So
what I love about that is two things. You're seeing people as they are. And I think inviting them to participate, I think, at least here in the States, we sometimes hold back, and rather than invite in or accompany them, like you said, move a chair around, right? Just start really small and then get ownership in this, and then people will lean in.
One thing I do a lot of is I have a lot of non-Christians who come to my church, and it's absolutely amazing. I don't know what happens, but like my son, for example, He does the visuals every week. He's there twice a week. And then this other people just seem to do things, and then they get more involved. So they might just help me when you're at a Christingle because they say, I need help with this piece of thing. And I know you've got one in your house. I'm not afraid of asking for help. And then they say, is there anything else I can do? And I say, well, you're very good at IT. Do you want to help me with the website? And then it just gets a bit more and more. And then suddenly they find they happen to be there on a harvest service because they're helping me with the thing or whatever. And then they seem to come every week. I don't really know what happens, but... So it seems to be my goddaughter comes as well, and she's not a Christian, and my son. So they're both there. And it's just, we had some people come who were carers for other people because I told you we had a lot of special needs people. So one lady came who was a carer, and she wants to get baptized because she just came as a carer, but she just found Jesus. So we just want to be that place where people feel that they can come. And she said no other place would have worked for me because you all answered my questions. You made me feel comfortable. We could just have a meal. It was informal. I didn't feel judged. And so it's just meeting the right people in the right place for them, I suppose. But just the informal relationship building seems to work.
Well, I love that deep kind of presence in the community, listening, and then just forming community itself. Like people's first experience of the church is actually a place to belong and connect rather than trying to get them, for instance, into some kind of worship experience that might seem very strange or foreign or some kind of program. It's much more organic in that sense.
And I think just, you never quite know when they cross the line, but something just happens and suddenly they find themselves, they've crossed the line and they have become a Christian. Sometimes it's really gradual and they don't even pinpoint when it happened, but it's very interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Fiona, thank you so much for sharing this story with us. I find it quite inspiring, and I'm hoping that many of our listeners and viewers will as well, because, what you've done just seems like things that anyone could do, right? It's not necessarily, like a really crazy out of the box, but it is actually quite out of the box in some wonderful ways. And that out of the box move is actually just meeting people where they are. And that's what so many churches are struggling to do. So thank you for inspiring us with this story.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
And I want to thank our audience for joining us for another episode of the Pivot Podcast. You can help us spread the word about Pivot by liking or subscribing to the YouTube channel or to any place that you listen to podcasts. It really does help us in our work.
And finally, the best compliment you can give us is to share Pivot with a friend. Until next time, this is Dwight and Terry signing off. See you next week.